Hello, and welcome back to David Galata, Book Dreamer, and I'm David Galata, the author of Crew of Ganges, Sorcerer, Clockmaker, and Painful Medicine, amongst others. Just wanted to give you some more background information. Today we're going to be talking about examples of the colonies that the terraforming vessel Ganges actually built. Oh, and yes, this is a new backdrop for those who've noticed. I've got a couple of new backdrops. I use them for my booth over at the CanAmed show. And this was actually a gift from a friend of mine. So if any of you want to ever send a cool backdrop for some sci-fi fantasy action, please let me know. It'd be great. I could always use more backdrops. I love them. I love the way they look. In any case, let's get into this examples of colonies. I do touch on the subject in the Crucible Spirals trilogy, and it's mentioned in Crew of Ganges and Veil of Strife and even Painful Medicine. They are proud of the colonies that they have created. By the time we are at the Crucible Spirals trilogy, Ganges has created 34 colonies. So yeah, they kind of know how to do this. Each colony they've created is actually a terraformed world. They took a dead planet and turned it into an absolute paradise. And this actually really started becoming their art by the time they reached planet 9. From 3 to 5, they were, really working on mastery. And by the time they reached planet 9, they were artists. Some examples that were given were worlds that had archipelagos all over them. No huge continents, just islands and islands and island chains all over the place with these beautiful seas. And the shapes of the islands themselves, if you scanned them, actually created a musical score. This is how far Ganges had gone when they had reached, say, planet 28, planet 30. They were really going out of their way to make artistic wonders from these dead planets in the hopes that the colonists would appreciate them. Another example is they had a world with rings, and they worked very hard to make sure that they did not disturb the rings and that all of the orbital stations that they left behind, that their gravitational influence would actually stabilize them. This way, the colonists could look up into their sky and see these beautiful ring system that surrounded their world, and it was just a piece of wonder. Now, when I say a colony, what do I mean by that? Well, first off, the entire planet has been terraformed. It has oceans, it's got deserts, it's got jungles, it's got everything. It's got tundras. All the environments that are required for a full ecosystem are put into place and are designed in such a way so that their interactions do not create environmental havoc. Along with this, the first city is built, and this would contain a power socket and protective home for whatever AIs came with the colonists. Could be one, could be two, depending on how many ships were sent. So that on the surface, there would be one major AI that could handle everything, and it would be happy in its new home, usually in the center of a small metropolis that was very carefully designed, that utilized geothermal power, and would create a nice beginning for the colonists. There was a home for everybody. Everybody would have a home. They would find industries waiting for them. They would find equipment waiting for them. Well, the power station just have to flick a switch, and guess what? Everything's humming. So this way, it was all predetermined and pre-made, and then the colonists could decide for themselves whether they wanted to stay there or if they wanted to branch out and make new communities, towns, villages, or new cities, or whatever they wanted to do with that world. But that beginning set was ready for colonists. The only thing missing would be the people. In the meantime, the world had plants and animals, and these buildings were designed to handle being abandoned for long periods of time. In fact, many of them would be quite beautiful when the colonists arrived, finding them covered with greenery and animals that were thoroughly unafraid of humanity and no threat to humanity. So this way, the colonists could really feel at home in a very pleasant and beautiful environment. If the planet had a moon, and they usually did, there would be a moon base built, again with an AI socket, just in case the AI who comes with the colonists wants to have its own separate home, or if there are two of them, then one could be on the moon, one could be on the surface of the planet, and a base was built around that socket for the AI. This way, if you want to have a colony on the colony's moon, you could do that. They could do that. They could just leave it alone. They didn't have to use that structure, but if they wanted to, it was there, ready and waiting for them, and fully functional. Everything had to be fully functional and self-reliant. Ganges also would leave behind its industrial orbitals at a safe orbit, a very stable, safe orbit. You would have a dozen or so of these large industrial space stations that could take apart asteroids and comets and mine them for whatever the colonists would need. This way, the colonies did not have to mine their own planet. They could not bother with that because they had the industrial orbitals right there. They had a bunch of them. And again, they were maintained beautifully and shut down. They were shut down nicely so that all you had to do was enter one, flick a switch and the lights come on and the air starts circulating and it's ready to go. It's ready to take on another asteroid, grind it up, separate its components, purify everything, and make sure you got your different materials, minerals, and whatnot that you needed, metals, gases, liquids, whatever it was you needed. Because Ganges realized very early on that if you were mining the asteroids and comets, you didn't need to mine the planet. In fact, mining the planet made very little sense. It was very disruptive, it was very destructive, and it could lead to long-term problems with the atmosphere and with the ecosystem, whereas asteroids don't have an ecosystem, so who cares? And it's much easier to mine on those because the minerals are right there at the surface, and the more you dig in, the more you find. And you don't really have to worry about what you're displacing, disrupting, or destroying. So you have, like our asteroid belt is huge, and the cometary cloud that surrounds this system is monstrous in size. There's more materials there than we need. So, it's all out there, folks. It is all out there. And this doesn't include rogue planets and interstellar asteroids either. So they would leave this equipment behind in case there were problems, in case the colonists wanted to use them. And if the colonists decided they wanted to ignore all of that technology, they could. Not a problem. Their planet is stable, ready, and ecologically sound. So it's got a stable environment, so no problems. They wanted to give the colonists choices, and they wanted to make the colonists feel welcome. So they would leave a beacon behind with a message in 1,000 languages, hoping that at least one of them they'd be able to translate and understand, welcoming them to their new world, which did not have a name. That was up to the colonists. That's not up to the crew of Ganges. That's up to the colonists. Crew of Ganges is not interested in colonizing, just terraforming. So, and they don't make house calls. Ganges does not make house calls. So they would leave the beacons behind with information about their world so that, hi, this is what your world, this is what's special about it, here's what we placed on there, here's how we built it. They would give instructions as to how they terraformed that planet in case they wanted to change something. Now they had proper methods and not the methods that were, say, used within the Sol system, like terraforming Mars, for example, um, which had two disastrous attempts attached to it. So this way, the people could actually make these decisions and would have the knowledge for themselves. So when Ganges creates a world for colonists, they're really doing a very full job. It's not just making sure that it's habitable and there are some plants and animals there that the colonists can use. No, they made full ecologies. They made a very full and rich environment and then created outposts for them to start. So they didn't have to go down and start hacking down trees and building log cabins or anything like that, or bringing down, hab shelters and stuff. No, it was all there. It was all there. These colony cities, these first mini cities, were actually large enough to hold 1 million crew, 1 million people, so that the colonies could just come down. The colonists could just land on the planet and, wow, pick a home, or however they want to organize themselves. So this was what they meant. They wanted to make sure that the moons were in stable orbits. The first asteroids to be ground up and used for the terraforming process were, of course, those asteroids that could, in the future, impact the world that they were terraforming. Yeah, let's get rid of all those dangers because you don't want some 10-kilometer long asteroid slamming into the planet you just built. So they would take care of those first. Ganges would identify them, grind them up, use them for the terraforming process, use them to, heal up whatever Ganges needed to heal. If there was impacts on the hull, things like that had to be replaced, they would use the asteroids for that. So the colonists would have a safe home as well. It was in a safe location. They didn't have to worry about asteroids flying in and messing with their new world. And they had access to stations both on their local moon, or 2 or 3, depending on how many moons they had, and on the surface of the world, and all those lovely orbitals that are out there just waiting for someone to turn them on and use them. So this is what Ganges meant by creating a colony. It wasn't just a bare bones situation. That was only for the first 4. The first 4 colonies were kind of so-so, but as time went on and they mastered their craft, they decided, well, why are we going halfway? Why not make it a real experience for these colonists to be able to come in there and go, wow, look at this beautiful world that we've been given. And this is what Ganges did for humanity and continues to do. It's their holy mission, and as far as they're concerned, there is no end to that mission. They are willing to do this forever. So this is some background material of my trilogy, the Crucible Spowers trilogy, and my short story book, Tales from the Age of Unity. This is all background material that I have written down as notes and stuffed in my head and in little recordings that I make so that I have a more complete history behind the ship, which helps to bring it come to life for the reader. I can refer to historical events accurately. I can refer to things that happened in the past that affect the present, and that helps to enrich the story itself. So if you're going to be writing science fiction, make sure you've got a nice, long, and complete history behind you. I hope you have enjoyed this week's little chat, and I will see you next week with another topic. And in the meantime, happy painting, everyone.